British Empire for her service to dance. You couldn't get a more higher accolade than that. Welcome to the show, Mira.
Thank you.
First, starting with Kuljit. Kuljit, you've been a pioneer in the music for a long time. I mean, as long as I can remember.
I'm not that old, you know.
Yeah. So what was your interest in music? At what age did you start, and how did it start?
Well, it started, my mother was a singer, Mahinda Kaur Bamra.
Yeah,
some
quite
people
well
know her,
known.
Quite well known.
Mm.
And I was, she used to sing shabads in the Gurdwara.
Right.
And at the age of 6, they used to say, play the tabla. You know, it wasn't that strict, actually. But
Who
so
said that?
my parents, you know, I mean,
Oh,
she didn't have a
so they
tabla player. I think
encouraged.
my father was struggling to learn the tabla.
Yeah.
I'm just laughing because he's probably watching now. And he sort of struggled, and I sort of overtook him in a way.
All right.
So
Because of your musical ability.
I suppose, yeah, I mean, if you say there's a natural ability, then that's what I had.
Yeah.
But I do have, I'm fascinated by how things work.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw people playing tabla, people playing music, when I listened to music being recorded, you know, I used to really be fascinated by how it's put together. So, you know, my mother's fascinated by food, for example. So if she eats a food, she'll say, oh yes, there's this much salt, this much pepper, this much curry pepper. But now I've got the ability, I can listen to a song
And work
and
out the ingredients.
I can work out the ingredients of the song. So I've always been fascinated by that.
So when did it start? Who actually was a pioneer before you to introduce you to that? Who was your role model?
I think my role models were basically people that played musicians, and I had, as a tabla player, you know, Abdul Tari was a phenomenal influence in my life.
Right.
But I think I started off as a tabla player, but I was always interested in how to make records. And in the early 70s, there wasn't a record industry in England.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the Indian music was imported from India and sold through distribution outlets. But there wasn't a sort of healthy, in fact, there wasn't an industry at all.
Exactly. And what year are we talking about? This is 70s?
Well, we're talking about 1977, 1978.
So it's not
but
that long ago,
not
really.
not that long ago, so I'm not that old, you know. But I remember there was the editor, Tasem Puriwal of Today's Pradesh, was getting married
Right.
in
80
something like, no, 60s actually, 1967,
right.
I think 1968.
Yeah.
And he said to my mother, you know, you are doing the Anand Karaj and you are singing some songs afterwards. So that's how it started, and then the demand grew for Punjabi music, and then as the demand grew and as the Asian population grew in England, there then became a demand for local bands. And in the early 80s is when we started recording. There was a group called Hira Group, everybody
Yeah, they're
knows.
still
came
around, I
still
believe.
around. And they came to me, and also a group called Premi.
Right.
And so they came to me and said, we want to make a record, can you do it?
Mm.
So myself and my
produce it.
actually produced the record.
Right, right.
And because I could operate the equipment and I could understand how the music was put together, because I'd analysed it all my life, we produced their records, and they, you know, that's history. They became platinum hits.
But you were a civil engineer before that, weren't you?
Before,
so what happened to that?
Yeah, I mean, I did a very, I think my father was really amazing in my life, because he said to me, you know, music is just a hobby. So keep the music going, but don't rely on it as a profession. So his advice went a bit wrong later on in my life, because I now do it as a profession.
Right.
But at that time it was great. So I did a very good Indian boy thing and became a civil engineer. And then after a while I realised that you know, there was something more to my life that was missing.
So you found your calling.
I found my calling, yeah. And you know, since then I've been.
You've done very well with it, haven't you? You won so many awards. I mean, they're all on your website.
Yes.
So which one is the one that actually sticks out, apart from Best Director of Music and Best of this and Best that?
Oh my
Which
God.
is the one that you prize the most?
Wow.
As far as awards, I mean, I'm sure they all.
That's a really good question. I mean, I don't know. I don't really spend a lot of time polishing my awards, you know, so I've lost track of which ones they are. But I remember I was presented a platinum disc for Rail Guddi, which is a, you know, still played today at weddings. And that was presented to me by John Peel, who's no longer with us. So that was quite a moving moment for me. So I sort of treasure that.
So what was your input in Rail Guddi? Because I've danced to that since.
I think everyone's danced it. Yeah, well, I produced Rail Guddi, so I composed it.
Since 16, though. I mean, I'm talking about, you know, historically, it's
1986. Yeah, so people can work out how old you are. So 19, yeah, but I produced Rail Guddi. So I wrote the music and I worked with the singer. I became, you know, record companies that began to produce Bhangra music used to say to me, Kuljit, you know, here's a band, produce their music. So my job was to put the orchestra together,
Right.
to write the music, to record it, and then, you know, to basically provide the whole completed song.
Sounds like great fun.
It's lots of fun.
Yeah, Mira, if I can bring you into this conversation. Now, you've won one of the highest orders there is in Britain, the Order of the British Empire, which is the OBE, for your services to dance. So what was it like to win that award?
Ritu, my belief is that I'm the front.
Yes.
I'm actually receiving this on behalf of hundreds of dancers who work with us, and I work at Academy. I'm the director of the organization, and we've been a springboard for the careers of, if not hundreds, at least tens of dancers who are working in this country. And all their work sort of adds up to a huge amount, and then I go and take the credit for them.
Right, and what kind of dance, what's so different about your dance academy? That, I mean, there's loads of dance academies around, so what is the difference?
Well, I would like to sort of really talk about the commonality rather than the difference here. We are an organization which celebrates dance, and any kind of dance, whether it is classical, contemporary, folk, commercial, any kind of movement which exists in the society is very important for us. So I think unlike other organizations, we have no inhibition about working with the best of the classical work as well as the best of the commercial dance coming from Indian cinema or, you know, West End. And I think that's what makes us different from everybody else.
So how did Academy start? What was the reason? What was the driving force?
It was set up by a beautiful dancer called Tara Rajkumar. And she used to live in this country in mid-70s. So she founded Academy in 1979 and then migrated to Australia in 3 years.
Oh, right.
So then there was a series of directors who were appointed after Tara. I came in to this country in 1982. I come from theatre background, studied cinema
Also
and radio.
dance? Are you a dancer yourself?
Well, actually, no.
Right, that's interesting.
I possibly dance socially. I've done
To
that.
Rail Gaddi and songs like
Yes, yes, as a teenager and possibly, you know, a younger person.
Yeah.
But that became a huge asset because I did not have a baggage, any baggage of a guru or a style or anything. And therefore, I'm able to kind of really embrace and bring in any kind of movement without any prejudices or baggage here.
And how many people are actually at Academy now? How many people are dancing?
We've got about now a team of 11 people who are working within the organization, and a group of about, I would say, 80 odd dancers who are working, and then another 400 dancers who are on our list.
That's amazing.
It's a huge list, yes.
And they're like freelancers, are they?
They're all freelancers, yes.
Right. Good. Well, we'd like to see a clip of yours, and we will do after the break. I'd like you, our viewers, to get your phone and get your hot cup of tea and join us after the commercial break and call our two guests here, speak to them about dance, music and anything you want to as far as the arts and creative industry in Britain is concerned. The number, as always, is 0871 990 3399. You can also log on our website, which is www.chaiwithritu.com. See you after the break.
Above all else, Tilda is pure traditional basmati.
The SETI Partnership, we are in partnership with our clients.
At the SETI Partnership Solicitors, we can advise on all your legal matters. We're a leading law firm that specialises in giving sound advice on matters that affect your everyday life. Think of a firm of solicitors, think of the SETI Partnership Solicitors. Call us on 0208 866 64 64.
The SETI Partnership, we are in partnership with our clients.
to spread the word further. So here goes.
Akash Basmati is a low price. I repeat, Akash Basmati is a low price. Akash Basmati बहुत ही सस्ता है. Read all about it. Akash Basmati is a real bargain. Akash Basmati is economical. સાંભળો, Akash Basmati बहुत સસ્તું છે. Akash Basmati is real value for money. मैं क्या जी, Akash Basmati बहुत ही सस्ता है.
Akash Basmati, available in different pack sizes.
ਹੁਸਨ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਓ ਕਰੀਏ ਪੰਜ ਦਰਿਆਵਾਂ ਦੀ ਧਰਤੀ ਤੇ ਹੁਸਨ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ, ਗਿੱਧੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉੱਡਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਡੋਰੀਏ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ, ਭੰਗੜਾ ਪਾਉਂਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਗੱਭਰੂਆਂ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ, ਆਪਣੇ ਸੱਭਿਆਚਾਰ ਆਪਣੇ ਵਿਰਸੇ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ। ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਇੰਤਜ਼ਾਰ ਕਰਾਂਗੀ ਹਰ ਸ਼ੁੱਕਰਵਾਰ ਸ਼ਾਮੀ 7 ਵਜੇ।
જીવંત વાતોનો એક અનોખો કાર્યક્રમ મિત્રો.
હા, કરશન કાકા છે?
હા જી, આ કરશન કાકા જ બોલે છે. રોટલો ખાઈને ખુશ રહેવાનું અને કેક આવે તો જમી લેવાની, કોઈ આશીર્વાદ આપે તો વધાવી લેવાના અને કોઈ બે કડવા શબ્દો કહે તો ખિસ્સામાં નાખી લેવાના. મને કે ઇંગ્લેન્ડ છે કે ગુજરાત? મેં કીધું ઇંગ્લેન્ડ જ છે. મારા વાલીડા ત્યાં ખોવાઈ ગયા છે, ત્યાં તો આજે પધાર્યા.
ગુજરાતી લાઈવ ટોક શો સાંભળીને ખૂબ જ આનંદ થાય.
આપનો ખૂબ ખૂબ આભાર સાહેબ. આજે આ કાર્યક્રમ જોઈ હસી હસીને લોટ થઈ જાય છે. ઘણી વાર તો ખુરશી ઉપરથી હું પડી જાઉં છું. પાઘડી દેંગા मूछ नहीं देगा, आप लाख पाउंड देगा तो भी मूछ नहीं देगा. ओहो रे कांड लागे रूपाड़ो. जो कार्यक्रम हारो હોય અને કાકી ખુશ થઈ જાય તો બાજરાના રોટલા, ખીચડી, કઢી, રીંગણા બટાટાનું ભરેલું શાક, લાડવા હોય કે જાંબુ હોય, 10, 12, 15 ઉલાડી બે ચાર પૂરી દાળ ભાત ખાઈને એ ઓડકાર ખાઈને પૂરી જાવ. મારું આમ નામ ખાટી મીઠી વાતો ચાલુ રાખશું. આમ ગયો ને આમ આવ્યો.
Hello, welcome back to Chai with Ritu. We will now see a clip of Academy's work that they've done. So if that is on cue, we'll get that ready now.
Our work can be found anywhere, from schools to community centres, pensioners groups to prisons. We actively push the boundaries of where dance can appear. Our work embraces and is inspired by architectural sites across the country. The number of public and private funders that return to support us year on year reinforces the importance and credibility of what we do. Our existence resides on our ability to adapt to the changing needs of communities within and beyond London.
Well, that was amazing. That was showing the whole ambit of what you do. So can you just describe to us what we were actually watching?
Yes, the clips what we watched were a combination of our education, community work, our conferences. You saw Anish Kapoor with Naseem Khan, our work in schools with Bollywood dancing, one of our contemporary pieces in the middle of Trafalgar Square, Sapne, which is a highly acclaimed kind of piece, which we perform all over. Actually, we are doing a part of Sapne for this Mayor's reception next week as well.
So how do you get involved in these kind of projects? Do you approach them or do they approach you? How does it work?
It's both ways. Anyone who wants to work with India, Asia, Pakistan, Bangladesh, who wants to work with imaginative, creative ideas and wants to explore new ways of interpretation, they just kind of come to us.
Right.
Or if I'm really excited by somebody's work and portfolio, then I make an effort to contact them.
Right. And what about this Trafalgar Square event? That's huge. You've done it for 2 years now and you've had the whole of Trafalgar Square to yourselves. How did that work? Is that through the mayor or?
It is through the mayor's office, but I worked with the people who commission for last, I would say, 22 years now.
Right.
So there's been a long-term partnership, creative partnership, which I've had with the people, and so they are quite open to the mad ideas I take to them. Yes.
Yeah, and how does it work as far as funding is concerned? I mean, do you get funding for this?
It's a combination.
Let's see what our callers have to ask. Hello, welcome to Chai with Ritu. Who's calling? Hello.
Hello.
Yes, welcome to the show.
Oh, hey, this is Pravesh.
Oh, hello, Pravesh.
How you doing?
Very well, and you?
Good, very good.
And what would you like to contribute to the show?
Well, is Koji there?
Hi, Pravesh.
Kuljeet is here, and
It's a
so
nice
is
surprise.
Mira.
How you doing?
I'm really good. We should actually introduce Pravesh.
I just thought I'd ring up and say hello.
Yeah.
Pravesh, can you tell me what's your formal introduction? Pravesh Kumar of
My name's
RICO,
Pravesh Kumar. I'm the artistic director of Ritu Arts.
Artist Director of RICO Arts. I'm going to have to repeat everything so that it's clear for our viewers.
Let me say a bit about Pravesh. Pravesh, just hold on one second. So
Okay, Kuljeet is going to give a formal introduction to you, Pravesh.
So Pravesh is the artistic director for RIFCO Arts, which is the Reduced Indian Film Company. And we've worked on a couple of projects together, but we recently worked on Deranged Marriage, the theatre production. So he's a very modest chap, but very talented.
Right. Very modest. Welcome to the show.
Very modest, yes. Thank you. Thanks,
You're welcome.
So you worked on Deranged Marriage, so I suppose you know a bit about, well, a lot about the British Indian impact on the theatre industry.
Yes.
Okay, so what can you share with us and our viewers on that today?
I produce theatre, and I work with a lot of young people in schools, and I work with a lot of elders as well.
Okay.
And, I tend to try and tell stories that are relevant to our community.
So you tell stories that are relevant to our community, such as what?
For example, at the moment we've got a show on the road, a little plug here, called Merry Christmas.
You have a show called Merry Christmas, okay, and what's it about?
It's basically about British Asian elders in a home around Christmas time.
All right.
And it's a heartwarming kind of rendition of a story, of a personal human story about this mother waiting for her son to come and see her.
Okay, let me just repeat that for the viewers. British Asian elderly in a care home, and it's their story, is it?
Yes.
This is a topic, in fact, that we discussed 2 or 3 weeks ago on the channel about British Asian elderly. What is their future? So what did you find? What did you discover on doing the play?
Harvey Verdi, who's the writer, is also playing it.
Sorry, say that again?
Who went into elders' homes and talked to them and came up with this story. And it's not a sermon. It's basically a kind of heartwarming, entertaining look we do at Christmas as British Indians.
Okay. And where is it playing? Where is it showing?
Playing at the People's Centre in Leicester.
People's Centre in Leicester. Okay.
5th to the 9th of December.
5th to the 9th of December. So
And,
if any of our viewers want to catch this play, you know where it is now. People's Centre in Leicester.
Brilliant.
And what else have you done? How have you found, your experience as far as, putting on productions like Deranged Marriage, which, even if people haven't seen it, they know of it.
Right.
Was it difficult to do?
Oh, yeah, it is difficult. It's very difficult to get theatre into, to get bookings for these plays. Kulji and I kind of know that, and, we had great difficulty to book Deranged Marriage, which has been a phenomenal hit, even getting it into some of the big theatres. For example, we were very recently in a very commercial theatre at Windsor Theatre Royal, and it took us 5 years to get our show in there, and now that we're in there, and it's sold out every night.
So what was your input in this, Kulji?
Well, I wrote the music for Deranged Marriage, but I think Pravesh is making the point of, and this is the topic we're discussing, there is a definite turn now from our community to go to theatre, whereas in the past it's not something that we would normally go to. And a lot of people seem to be adverse to what we used to call natak, which is usually it's play acting. But, but theatre is also play acting, but somehow people now see the value of going to the theatre. And Pravesh has been very strong in pulling our audiences to theatres because, you have to pay a ticket, you're taking a family, it's a trip in the car or a trip in the train.
Yep.
But, we are now pulling audiences and people are realising the value.
Just talking about the show we're doing right now, it's selling out everywhere across the country.
And where else are you showing it?
Sorry?
Where else is it showing?
It's at the moment, it's in Southampton. It's just north of Southampton.
Oh, is that why you're in Southampton this evening?
Yes.
Okay.
And which is why I'm not there today.
Yes.
But, it's pulling in. The great thing is as Kuji was just saying, we're pulling in real grassroots British Asian audiences, which is new to a lot of theatres. And, you know, I've got about, 50 aunties sitting in the auditorium right now, which is really great.
Oh, brilliant.
You know, and they don't know how to behave in the theatre, which is fine. You know, and
they don't know how to behave.
They come out and, talk in the middle of dialogue because they're used to watching Bollywood films.
Yeah, well, they're there to enjoy themselves, it's leaving out,
and it's
isn't
great, and it's just great to have them there. And so we want to do more work to bring them in.
Yeah, and what other productions have you worked on?
I mean, I'm a producer. I mean, I did a show a couple of years ago called Bollywood, Yet Another Love Story.
Bollywood, Yet Another Love Story?
Yes, did that.
Were you involved in that?
Done a lot of work in India, did a lot of commercial films there. And, I mean, theatre, I mean, I used to be an actor as well, and I did a show called 14 Songs, 2 Weddings and a Funeral.
Right, excellent.
With Minda Nagra, who was in... what's she in?
Many things.
Sorry?
I've seen you perform as well, Pravesh. Hi, this is Meera.
This is Meera from Academy Dance.
Hi, Meera. Congratulations. Listen, I saw some of your work. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Really, really good.
Well, they're all inspiring people around us today.
We try.
Well, I wish you all the success.
Thank you.
And let me just tell our viewers again, in Leicester, it's at the People's Theatre from the 2nd to the 8th,
to the 9th.
To the 9th of December in Leicester.
Merry Christmas.
And Merry Christmas is a play, and we'd love you to go and watch it and really support the creative industry. Thank you very much, Pravesh.
Thank you so much.
All the best.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, full of inspiring people here. So you get involved in the drama as well as the music, the music in drama as well as in films?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked, as a musician, you work in producing songs, and you also work in producing many other areas. So I worked in films. I mean, from people might have recognised me from Bombay Dreams. So if you can see Bombay Dreams,
you were having a whale of a time.
Yeah. So, and then I wrote the music for The Far Pavilions, which is another musical. But as I say, it is, audiences are now coming. And when I remember when I first told my uncle about Bombay Dreams, and I said, you must come and see the show, it's amazing. You know, the ticket's like £40, but you must come. And he said, oh no, I'll see the video. And I said, no, it's not going to be on video. You have to go there and experience it.
It's a different mindset, isn't it?
Yeah, it's completely
well, we
different.
want to hear more about your work just after the break. So to our callers, please call us after the break if you want to speak to either of our guests or discuss any point or experiences you've had in this field. Our number, as always, is 0871 990 3399. You can also look on our website. We will see you after the next break. Thank you.
दिन भर भूखे रहते थे बेचारे, मुझे बर्दाश्त नहीं हुआ,
इसीलिए हमने हेल्पलाइन को कॉल किया।
बच्चे हमारा फ्यूचर हैं। बच्चों की तरफ क्रूएल्टी को रोकने के लिए NSPCC एशियन चाइल्ड प्रोटेक्शन हेल्पलाइन को 0800-096-7719 पर कॉल कीजिए।
माँ प्रणाम।
खुश रहो।
अब अपनी बात पूरी कीजिए जस्ट डायल के साथ। No accounts to open, no credit cards needed, no bills from us and excellent line quality. So throw those calling cards. Just dial का एक्सेस नंबर डायल करो, प्रॉम्प्ट के बाद अपना डेस्टिनेशन नंबर और फिर ढेरों बातें।
हाय माँ।
तो फिर से?
माँ ये जस्ट डायल है। Just dial 0871-751-5000. Calls to India now only 6 pence per minute.
Let's discuss your views, your opinions, your lifestyles as British Asian. Hello, welcome to Chai with Ritu again on this Tuesday evening. Don't forget to log on onto our website, which is www.chaiwithritu.com. And also we want to hear your views throughout the show. Now, imagine this. Imagine that you're being beaten by your husband. Imagine that you have the threat of your children being taken away from you. You call the police for help, they come, but you can't speak the language and you can't report the crime. Imagine the shame that your family will feel that you have reported a crime, which is domestic violence. Today we are going to be talking about this subject, and we want to hear your views. Perhaps you know someone who is going through some kind of abuse, domestic in the home, whether it's physical, mental, verbal, some kind of abuse. If you know anyone, we want to hear from you or from them. They can call our number, which is 0871 990 3399. We have two people who are going to join us in the debate today, and our mission today is if we can even change or help one person today, the show would have been worth doing. The first guest we have today is Fozia Raja. Fozia Raja is a counsellor for Asian women who are going through domestic abuse. She's also a trainer and trains people who are in the front line of helping other women and men in this situation. Welcome to the show, Fozia. My other guest is Belinda Davis. Belinda Davis is here to tell us her own story. Belinda was married 20 years ago. She has 3 children who are 21, 19 and 15. Well, welcome to the show. Belinda is Belinda Davis now, but it was in fact Belinda Panchal. Is that right? Panchal. Yes. Well, welcome to the show, Belinda. Now, we'd like to hear your experience. You were married 20 years ago. Tell us, how did you meet your spouse? And
I met my spouse at college, and his name's Shanti Panchal.
Okay.
He had been married before, so I was his second marriage.
So what attracted you to him?
Actually, it was the way he talked was what attracted me at first. He was very good at talking, and he was very good at listening, and he talked a lot of philosophy, which appealed to me. I was very interested in.
Okay. And you were at college, and what were you studying at the time?
I was studying fine art. We were both studying fine art.
Fine.
I think my family were very against the marriage when we got married. And then I went to India to live with him, and it didn't work.
Whereabouts in India were you?
Well, he comes from Gujarat,
right.
but we went back there to live in Bombay, and I hadn't finished my college course, so I started my last year of college in JJ School of Arts.
Okay.
But
how long were you in India for?
Oh, for a very short time. I'd say about 2 weeks, and we had to come back because we didn't get a legal document that we were supposed to have got. And then we stayed here. We lived in a bedsit, and but I think things started to go wrong when I had my first child.
Okay, what actually happened? What was the first sign of things going wrong?
Physical violence. He was very controlling anyway in the early stages of the marriage.
Controlling in what way? What did he do that was so controlling?
Well, I had to drop my friends, and he was happy if I did things his way. He was very good at convincing me to do things the way he wanted them to be done.
Did you not answer back? Did you not stand your own ground?
No, because that's a good point, because bullies don't home into those kind of females, do they? They hone into individuals that they can bully, and usually those are very timid, probably very unassertive women.
So what was the attraction
quiet.
for, I mean, on the other side of the coin, what's the attraction for a timid woman to want to be with a controlling man, or vice versa? Why put yourself in that
because
situation?
you're going further back into that individual's background, and it can be to do with maybe their parents, and if they have a very dominant parent who's very controlling.
Okay, just tell us your story. What happened? What was the incident that really alarmed you about his behaviour?
When he started throwing things, and he hit me while I was holding the baby, and the violence steadily got worse each year. He would swear at me in front of the children, which used to break my heart, because it's so important that the children grow up in an environment where they respect both parents
Mhm.
and that they respect the mother. I think the mother is the queen of the home, really, and she should be seen as such.
What used to instigate the violence? What drove him so mad to do that?
If things weren't going his way, but I do feel Shanti was mentally unstable anyway. It would be, he'd hit the children, he'd swear at the children, swear at me, and he'd call my older son slow, you're a donkey, or it's just, I don't know.
Okay, so it was a whole catalogue and series of things. So why didn't you do something about it? I mean, a woman can probably take abuse herself, but when the children are involved, that's really the last straw for a lot of women. So why didn't you take that step?
Because if you're in a controlling relationship, they will control everything, your finances, the people you know, so you're living in a very, very small cocoon. And you're made to feel that you're worthless. You have no self-esteem because of it. And you feel that you have no power, you can't move out of that. And anything they say to you, you will believe it. So if they say to you that, I will take everything, and you'll have to leave, you believe that.
Did you speak to any other women? Did you speak to any agencies? Did you get it? Did you know what to do in that situation?
I went to many places for help, but everywhere I turned to, you're up against a wall and you can't really get out of it. If you run away from your home, you lose your rights to your home, to get back in your home, so you're told to stay in there.
Well, that's not strictly true in law now.
It isn't, no, so it's changed then since then.
Yes.
Also, you'll find that your husband is so good at telling other people a different story about you, that they will see you as you being the bad woman or the bad mother.
And you're the instigator as opposed to the victim.
That's right. And
what about family? Did you tell family?
I told my family, yes.
And were they supportive?
They were supportive, but there was only so much they could do. I mean, he would phone my family. And sometimes, I mean, he would seem as if he was in the right, which they always are anyway. They seem to believe they're always in the right.
Okay, what was it? What was that one step, that one point where you said, enough is enough?
Oh.
When was it?
Enough is, oh God, enough is enough. I think enough for me was when he hit me, but I think I stayed in the marriage because there was nowhere I could go. I had no money financially to move anywhere. But he took me to court and he was going to take everything from me and he was going to take the children from me.
On what grounds did he take you to court?
Because his accusations was that I was unstable, that I was a bad mother. So he had a whole range of reasons. Well, yeah, that's it.
Was the police ever called?
Quite a few times, yeah. I called them in but they never take enough action. They used to say they would arrest him, but the police would come to the house and he would be holding the children and crying. One time when the police came round, he had already cut his hand and he told them I'd cut him, I'd attacked him. So it's a very difficult scenario.
Okay, so how long ago were you divorced from him?
I've been divorced 5 years.
5 years. So you were married 20 years ago, is that right? So was that 15 years after the marriage or 20 years after the marriage?
Oh, that's 25 now.
Oh, right, okay.
Yes.
Okay, so you stayed in the relationship for 20 years.
That's right.
What was the relationship with him and the children, the 3 boys you have?
Very controlling. When they started to grow into teenagers and they wanted to do certain things, they couldn't do it. They had to do things his way. They had to go to a religious school, which they didn't want to go.
And what would have happened if they'd rebelled, like a lot of teenagers do?
It's crazy. He'd say, well, I'll phone the police if you don't go.
And was that enough to make them go?
For a time it was, but he'd drive them to such an extent that my older son was almost going to punch him. And
was there
my
any violence
son,
between the children and him? I mean, 3 boys and a father.
My son got violent. My older son, he smashed everything in the room, and he smashed the door. I think he drove my son to such an extreme. And my older son's quite quiet. He was quite a placid person. So he drove him to be quite aggressive, quite violent at the end. I think if it stayed any longer, I don't know, it would have got quite bad. But I think Drew was threatening that he was going to leave home if things didn't get better. So he told me that to sort it out. But he ended up taking me to court. But and he believed even then at court that he was going to take the children, even though the children didn't like him, didn't want to be with him.
Yeah, but it was a controlling way of doing that.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you can relate, or some of our viewers can relate to the story. So do call in on 0871 990 3399. We would like to hear from you, your experiences, your views on this subject. Now, if I'd like to invite Fozia. Fozia, you work with Asian women in this situation. What kind of cases do you come up against?
Okay, I work as a counsellor for an organisation called EACH, and within EACH we have a separate unit to work with women, Asian women specifically, experiencing violence and abuse. We come across a range of cases. Abuse, particularly within the Asian community, can take many different forms. Some are extreme cases, and it involves a lot of physical and emotional and sexual abuse as well.
Right.
Some cases are financial abuse, the restrictions on socialising, isolating women from their friends, not allowing them to work. And really what we work against is men's sense of entitlement, and not just men's sense of entitlement, but within particularly Asian culture and other BME communities as well, there is the family and
which
the
is
role.
A very strong
extremely strong.
And isn't a woman's identity, mainly especially in an Asian family, wrapped up in the family itself? That is part of her identity. She's a wife, she's a mother.
Absolutely, it's a very good point you make. I often work with women, and part of my work with them is about how they see themselves. And women will often see themselves as mothers, wives, daughters, and the list goes on, but never quite women within their own rights. So their identity is very much mixed up with their family.
So how is it different to any other community? How is Asian women's problems in this situation different to anyone else's?
I think it's one, how the abuse manifests itself.
Okay.
There's been a lot in the press recently about forced marriages, and there have been some quite high profile cases as well. But also the fact that by the fact of being an Asian woman, a lot of these women may not be accessing mainstream services, which is a huge problem. They are supposedly hard to reach groups. If you are somebody who doesn't speak the language, or you don't have necessarily the language skills, where do you go to? Who do you ask? If you don't have the money, and a lot of what Belinda says does actually resonate in terms of my work with Asian women.
So would they come to you first, or would they go to the police first, or would they go to the family first? Where would they go?
I haven't had many referrals directly from the police. My referrals come mostly, for instance, one example is I work in the borough of Barnet, and I work with 2 Asian organisations. So there's the Sangam Advice Centre on one side, and a lot of the referrals are made through that advice centre. On the other side of Barnet is a smaller organisation called Barnet Asian Women's Association, who deal with, it's a project for women or Asian communities experiencing mental health, and the referrals will come through there. And we do get quite a few referrals from health. I see quite a number of women who have complex mental health issues as well, and that's how their referral come. Or maybe they've just accessed a community group to meet other Asian people in their community, and they've been referred to counselling through there.
Right, okay. Well, we'd like to hear from our viewers. What would you do first? Imagine yourself in that situation. Call us. We'd like to hear from you, your experiences and your views on this subject. The number is 0871 990 3399. Please call us, and we want to hear if you've been through this, or you know someone who has. Would they go to the police first, or would that be their last resort? What do you think, Fozia? Would it be the first, or would they would they say no, the police is really the last resort?
I
mean,
think
Belinda?
for a lot of women it is very difficult to make that goal, to call the police and to ask for outside interference into what a lot of people essentially see as a family matter. And certainly for Asian women, they do actually put themselves at a lot of risk by calling the police from the wider, from their immediate family members, but also from the communities that they live in. They risk being ostracized, and not just them. Most of my clients do have children, and a lot of women will say, well, okay, I would quite happily walk away for myself. That is not a problem. But my children are not going to be accepted within the community. Who is going to, when my children grow up, who's going to want to marry my daughter if her mum is divorced? And these ideas and these
taboo
beliefs,
is still there.
it's still prevalent.
And it's something that women will just put up with.
That's right, and not necessarily for their own sake, or they will have family. If they're from India and Pakistan, they will have family in those countries, and they will say, well, what if the husband is financially supporting those parents, or the shame it will bring on if I have siblings who aren't yet married, if my clients have sisters who aren't yet married, they will be very reluctant to take steps.
When we first advertised that we were going to be talking about this show, we had people logging on to the website, which, as you know, is www.chaywithritu.com, and one of our viewers said that she actually got more abuse from the in-laws once she told them that she's being abused by her husband. The in-laws also joined the bandwagon and said, yes, it must be your fault. So it was actually worse for her that, you know, the family she did have weren't there to support her. Well, we'd like to hear your views. Number is 0871 990 3399. You've heard from both of our guests today. If there's any questions you want to ask them, please call us after the break. See you soon. Chai with Ritu.
अजमेरी बाबा आपके मुश्किल हालात में आपके मददगार। अगर आपके घरेलू हालात या फिर इंसानी रिश्ते किसी मुश्किल दौर से गुजर रहे हैं, बच्चों से परेशानी हो रही है, एक अच्छे जीवन साथी की तलाश है, अजमेरी बाबा जी एक लंबे अरसे से सही मशवरे के जरिए लोगों की खिदमत करते आ रहे हैं। आज ही फोन कीजिए अजमेरी बाबा जी को ऑन 0777 913 7810 पर।
मैं अपने बेटे की पिटाई कर देता हूँ।
मेरी बेटी की सहेली हमेशा गुमसुम रहती थी। बात में उसने बताया कि उसका अंकल उसे अब्यूज कर रहा है।
हमारे नेबर अपने छोटे छोटे बच्चों को घर में अकेला छोड़ जाते।
खुद पे कंट्रोल ही नहीं रहता, फिर गिल्टी फील करता हूँ।
बेचारी एकदम टूट चुकी थी, मुझसे बर्दाश्त नहीं हुआ।
कई बार दिन भर भूखे रहते थे बेचारे, मुझे ये सब बर्दाश्त नहीं हुआ।
इसीलिए हमने हेल्पलाइन को कॉल किया।
बच्चे हमारा फ्यूचर हैं। बच्चों की तरफ क्रूएल्टी को रोकने के लिए NSPCC एशियन चाइल्ड प्रोटेक्शन हेल्पलाइन को 0800-096-7719 पर कॉल कीजिए।
पापा, मैं तैयार हूँ।
अब मेरी गूगली खेलो।
बेटा, ये अचानक सीने में दर्द?
पापा?
पराठे, बदहजमी, ये तो अजीब सा दर्द है।
मम्मी को फोन कर रहे हैं।
आज मैं जिंदा हूँ 999 की वजह से।
पापा, गूगली शुगली।
सीने का दर्द हार्ट अटैक हो सकता है। वक्त जाया ना करें, 999 को फौरन कॉल करें।
Hello, I'm Kuldeep Vora, and I'm going to take you through a journey of very interesting mouth-watering dishes in Cook with Kuldeep. You know, we are all busy, but we want good food, and there is no need to sacrifice taste or flavor. This is the show where you can also participate. If you send me a recipe and we include it in the show, you'll get an excellent food hamper. Don't forget to watch this cookery show only on MATV.
फुल्लां विचों फुल सोहना जिवें है गुलाब दा, जग नालों वखरा है हुसन पंजाब दा।
पंजाब च जाना ओदे हुसन नूं देखना किन्नू चंगा नहीं लगदा।
और इस प्रोग्राम का नाम भी है
ਹੁਸਨ ਪੰਜਾਬ
ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਇੰਤਜ਼ਾਰ ਕਰਾਂਗੀ ਹਰ ਸ਼ੁੱਕਰਵਾਰ ਸ਼ਾਮੀ 7 ਵਜੇ।
ਟੌਰ ਬਣ ਜਾਊ ਸਾਡੀ ਟੌਰ ਬਣ ਜਾਊ, ਟੌਰ ਬਣ ਜਾਊ ਸਾਡੀ ਟੌਰ ਬਣ ਜਾਊ। ਹੁਸਨ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦਾ।
Do you have what it takes to be a presenter? Do you stand out from the rest of the crowd? If you're shouting yes, then we want to hear from you. So, if you want the chance to be an MATV presenter, then send us your details along with a covering letter to MATV, 7 Woodboy Street, Leicester, LE1 3NJ, or email info@matv.co.uk.
Hello, welcome back to Chai with Ritu. We are talking about abuse today, a very serious topic which affects a lot of people but don't really know how to deal with it, don't really know where to go to. We'd like to hear from you on 0871 990 3399. We have a counsellor here with us today, Fozia Raja. She is here to actually give advice on where to go, what to do. Belinda Panchal is here to tell her story of how she actually sustained a marriage for 20 years, having suffered abuse in one form or the other. Now, abuse is not necessarily physical, it can be mental, it can be anything else. So what other abuses did you find you had? I mean, you've talked about mental abuse. I mean, he used to shout at you. Physically as well? Was there a lot of that?
Yeah, physical abuse.
Okay.
He gave me a black eye one day, smashed everything in the room. And,
took it out, his frustration.
And I phoned one of his friends and said, should I go to the police? And they protected him and they told me not to.
Okay. So the question I asked you earlier, when was enough? Enough was enough. What really made you say, I'm now stepping out of this marriage and creating a life for myself?
The only way that I got out of the marriage was, well, he wanted to take me to court. He wanted to take the house and the children. That's what he believed. He had a third wife that he was, a third woman that he was planning to marry.
Right. So he was unfaithful as well.
Yeah, and he told my children that, do you want a new mummy? So they were already, and they were absolutely terrified.
Right.
And he took me to court, but my solicitor, I went to my solicitor, and
did the solicitor actually advise you, on your remedies?
I didn't
because
get
there's civil and there's criminal remedies as well.
I didn't get enough support from my solicitor, and also I was too scared to tell him everything. I was too scared to tell him about the sexual abuse that went on for a very long period of time with him. I got a very, very bad deal at the end of it, I think, from the solicitor. My ex-partner is still working at the back of my garden. He has a studio there.
All right.
So
he's an artist, is he?
He's an artist.
Right,
and I think there's something else that women have a problem with. If they stay with abuse for a very long time, they can't let go of the abuser, and they find every reason.
This relationship's what I think gives the police nightmares, because they do, in my world, in the criminal world, turn up at someone's doorstep, try and go and help them, but then they find that a case is made, a statement is given, and we are usually defending the men because they are the alleged defendants at that time. I mean, this is the criminal department at our office. And then we find, we go to court, and the husband often says to us, well, she's going to drop the charges, you know that. And the police then have this, or CPS of actually securing a prosecution.
Yes.
And now what they do is, if a woman does want to drop the allegations, they just go on the written evidence.
Yes.
And they often force women to come to court and say, well, take it seriously, because there's a lot of police time that gets wasted in making statements and then not seen through to the end. And this is where the new act that came into force to actually, to pin abusers down and say, well, we're going to prosecute no matter what change of heart your wife has. And the wife often, or the spouse or the partner often, has a change of heart because she's frightened. She's frightened that now that she's reported it, he's gone to the police, he's gone to court, he's going to come back at some stage and the damage is going to be worse.
Yes.
And is that what was going through your mind?
Yes, exactly. And I believed that I would lose everything. I think my worst fear is that I'd lose the children somehow, even though I knew the children were terrified of him.
Okay. Fawzia, have you had any other cases where men are getting abused? Because, you know, we're only talking about women, and 1 in 6 men have suffered abuse in some time in their marriage. 1 in 4 women have suffered it. So there is a percentage of men also out there who need support, who need help.
We do accept that, yes, men do experience abuse, but our experiences, and if you look at the statistics and if you look at all the numbers, is still that the majority of victims are women and the majority of perpetrators are men. So for this reason, there are many more agencies to support men. That's reflected in the voluntary and statutory organisations, although there are organisations out there who will support men. But I think it's quite difficult actually for men to come forward, and there would be a lot of stigma for them that they were being abused by a woman. That would
Do you
go
think the
something
taboo
towards
is
their
even
masculinity.
worse for men than it is for women?
I think the stigma of being abused, I don't think it's actually quite taken as seriously. You know, my wife abused me in some way. He might sort of think, well, there might be a lot of shame involved in that, although there's a lot of shame for women who have been abused as well.
It goes to the core of the dignity of the person, doesn't it? What about women's refuge centres? Do you actually ask, you know, for them to be taken there, and how does that work?
I never ask. Something about working in the field of domestic violence and working with this particular client group is it's about empowerment. It's about respecting your client's choices and allowing them to make their own choices. So if women come and say that they want to leave, then part of my work in parallel to the counselling is the advocacy side, and part of that is finding a place, a refuge place that will be able to take her on and take her, and in a lot of cases take the children as well.
Yeah, and are there specific Asian women's refuge centres?
There are a number of Asian women's centres.
And what is different about them to the other refuge centres?
I think for one thing is that the Asian women's cultural needs are met in terms of they may feel better supported by being in an environment where there are Asian women, certainly where language is an issue. Although I have to say there are also going to be cases when Asian women feel that they don't want to go to another Asian organisation simply because there is an issue about confidentiality. They are convinced that because the community being the way it is, somebody somewhere will find out and they will be found, and their sense of safety is quite threatened by that. But in terms of refugees, if anybody's interested or wants to know, you can log on to the domestic violence help. They have a website, or Women's Aid, and there are a number of specialist organisations that they can put you in touch with. And there's also Refuge as well, which have their website.
Well, we'd like to hear our views from our viewers. The number is 0871 990 3399. If you want to discuss this subject, please call in and speak to our counsellor here. I specifically want to know, so let's just see a typical scenario. Someone comes in, she's suffered from abuse from a husband or partner or spouse the day before. What would you say to her? What's the process of actually empowering her? What would you do?
I think if somebody's in immediate danger, the very first thing is safety planning. If somebody's come through the door or been self-referred for whatever reason and by whoever, there is a process of actually how safe are you? Are you in immediate danger? And for any of my clients who are, I would always encourage them, you call the police, you call 999.
Right.
If you are in immediate danger.
The culture first with the police was that they used to say, well, it's a domestic matter, they should sort it out, nothing to do with us. But do you find that that's now changed when you say to them, call the police will take it more seriously?
I think it has. I mean, I attend, local domestic violence forums, and there has been so much work that has been done with the police.
Yeah.
I think really what we need is the attitudes within wider communities, and certainly within, say, South Asian culture as well, that kind of awareness of abuse. And the fact that it does still exist, and we can't just say, well, not in our community.
Yeah. Well, we'll go on to that subject. Hello, who's calling Chai with Ritu?
Hello?
Hello?
Hello,
Sorry, can you speak up, please?
हेलो जी, नमस्ते जी, मैं हिंदी में बात कर सकता हूँ जी?
हाँ जी, बोल सकते हैं, हाँ जी। हाँ, बोल सकते हैं।
अच्छा, ऐसा है जी, मेरा ना केस मैंने यहाँ मैरिज की थी 2003 में।
हाँ जी, थोड़ा ऊंचा बोलो, आपका नाम क्या है?
मेरा नाम राम सिंह है जी.
Ram Singh. Okay, welcome to the show, Ram Singh. How can we help you?
Yeah, because मैंने 2003 में शादी की थी जहाँ जी.
आपने शादी की थी, हाँ जी?
तो मैं वैसे इस कंट्री में 2002 में 2001 में 2000 में
हाँ जी
मैंने जहाँ साल में ली थी.
हाँ जी.
उसके बाद मैंने 2003 में शादी कर ली थी.
हाँ जी.
तो बाद में हमने 2003 में ही अपना केस अप्लाई कर दिया था मैरिज का.
हाँ जी.
इन लोगों ने 2005 में आके हमारा केस रिफ्यूज कर दिया.
Okay.
तो फिर मेरे सिस्टर ने जो सिस्टर था वो चाहता था कि मैं इंडिया चला जाऊं.
हाँ जी.
मेरी वाइफ उधर से जाके ले, मगर मेरी वाइफ उस टाइम जो 2005 में बहुत बीमार थी, वो मेंटल अपसेट थी बहुत ज्यादा.
हाँ जी.
उसके बाद फिर सिस्टर ने बोला कि ऐसा है कि आपकी वाइफ को कोई देखने वाला यहाँ नहीं है,
हाँ.
तो हम लोग अपील करके देखते हैं.
हाँ जी.
तो उन लोगों ने जब अपील करने के लिए सोचा तो उस टाइम हमारा टाइम निकल गया था कोर्ट का.
Okay, आपका जो क्वेश्चन है वो डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस का है?
हाँ जी, मैं एक आपको बताना चाहता हूँ जो अभी सिचुएशन में वो आपको बताना चाहता हूँ.
अच्छा.
अभी इन लोगों ने फिर हमारे सिस्टर ने नया केस फिर दोबारा भेज दिया था उन लोगों को.
Okay.
तो उन लोगों ने फिर रिफ्यूज कर दिया, बोलते कि आप इंडिया से होके आओ.
Okay.
तो इन लोगों ने बीच में बोल दिया था, किसी ने कंप्लेंट कर दिया कि हमारी शादी सही नहीं है, मैंने अपनी वाइफ के साथ रहने के लिए शादी की है.
हाँ जी.
तो फिर इन लोगों ने क्या किया कि मेरे को मैं साइन करने जाता था, डॉक्टर ने लिख के दिया है, रिपोर्ट जो भेजा डॉक्टर ने, उसमें ये लिखा है कि अगर मैं जाता हूँ तो मेरी वाइफ बच नहीं सकती क्योंकि वो मेंटल भी है.
Okay.
और उसका जो इंजर भी है वो घर का काम वाम नहीं करता.
हाँ जी. तो आपको वापस जाना पे है?
तो मैं वापस नहीं गया, तो फिर इन लोगों ने मेरे को पकड़ लिया था इधर पुलिस ने, मैं साइन करने का मेरे को बिठा लिया था.
Okay.
तो फिर मेरा सॉलिसिटर हाई कोर्ट में चला गया.
हाँ जी.
अभी मेरा केस हाई कोर्ट में ही है.
Okay.
तो मैं ये पूछना चाहता हूँ कि क्या मेरी वाइफ कितनी ज्यादा सीरियस है? डॉक्टर ने सब कुछ लिख के दिया हुआ है.
हाँ जी.
होम ऑफिस मेरे को बार बार परेशान कर रहा है, इसका क्या हल हो सकता है?
अच्छा, तो आपका क्वेश्चन, हम तो डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस की बात कर रहे हैं. हाँ जी. तो आपका क्वेश्चन क्या है? डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस का तो नहीं है?
मेरा क्वेश्चन ये नहीं है. मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि मैं अभी क्या करूं कि मेरी वाइफ बहुत सीरियस है.
अच्छा.
डॉक्टर ने लिख के दिया हुआ है.
Okay, तो
मेरे को परेशान कर रहा है. मैं क्योंकि अभी हाई कोर्ट में भी चले गए हम लोग.
हाँ जी. आपके पास सॉलिसिटर है ना?
हाँ जी, सॉलिसिटर
हाँ जी.
है.
But if you've got a solicitor, then I can't advise you anyway. आपका solicitor ही आपको advise करूँगा. तो आपको उसको पूछना चाहिए, क्योंकि सबको जो आपके notes है सब उसके पास है.
नहीं, मैंने खाली आपको ये बताया कि देखो मेरी क्योंकि
हाँ जी, I can't. हाँ जी, आपके पास solicitor already है.
हाँ जी.
Then I can't advise you anyway. Secondly, I'd have to read all your papers before I can give you any decision.
नहीं, मैं खाली रत्तू जी आपसे ये पूछना चाहता हूँ.
हाँ जी.
जब मेरी वाइफ के डॉक्टर ने लिख के दिया कि वो मेंटल है, वो घर नहीं कर सकती.
चलो, हाँ ठीक है, आप ऐसे करो तो आप अपना solicitor के साथ बात करना, because I can't really advise you if you already have one. Thank you very much for calling. Thanks. Yeah, I think that was a convoluted question, but it was about his wife not being well and
but it's quite interesting because a lot of Asian women that I see, they do not understand what counselling is.
Yeah.
And the concept of domestic violence, and it's actually reflected in that just how much they will tolerate. You know, we have our definitions of violence, and the government and the Home Office have given us that these are the definitions of violence. But actually, if you speak to women, they will actually tolerate a certain amount, but only when it becomes very apparent will they actually start to think, well, actually something isn't quite right here.
Okay. So what is the difference between someone who comes to you for counselling, maybe because they're unstable, maybe they're going through severe depression, as opposed to actually coming to you because they have, you know, suffered abuse mentally? Do you see the logic in the conversation? Someone can suffer mental abuse, but not necessarily be mentally unstable in a way. So where do you detect that? I mean, are you qualified enough to do that as counsellors?
As counsellors, we do assess in terms of how they present, and because we work with them long term, you can get an idea, you know, are they on medication, who have they been referred by, what kind of care are they receiving within the wider communities, are any other agencies involved in their care? These will be good indicators as to what's going on in this woman's life. Now, a lot of women do come and they're already on prescribed medication.
So do you still counsel them?
Yes, we do. We do still women. If we turned away all the women who are on prescribed medication, that would probably be half my client list.
Right. And what kind of medication?
Usually for depression and anxiety.
Right. And let's just look at the causes of the abuse. Why do men or the instigator, I'm not necessarily saying men, but why is there this violence?
Essentially, we can say it's about this, it's about that, but essentially, if we take away all those layers, we're looking at power and control and men's sense of entitlement, and not necessarily men or people's sense of entitlement over somebody else, that they are entitled to be a certain way. And usually it is the man with their partners, or even family sense of in-law sense of entitlement. You know, the dowry system was is supposed to be outlawed, and yet
do you still find it happens?
An Asian the number of clients who tell me my mother-in-law still gives me a hard time because when we got married, all she got was a new a sofa, and you know, whereas she knows so and so, and their daughter brought a car and a fridge with them, and you've only brought this. Or, you know, you didn't give us enough, you know, how much jewellery the parents of the girl's side have to give to the in-laws, to the sister-in-law, and these things still go on.
Oh, right. Well, that's surprising to hear, because we thought we've now moved on from that. But if our viewers have experienced any problems with dowry or with abuse from in-laws, or not necessarily from in-laws, but from anyone else because of this subject, I think it's quite interesting to hear from you on 0871 990 3399. So what would you say the percentage of cases that you actually get on dowry? Because, you know, as I say, I would have thought that we would have moved on, but I know in our practice, and there's in the divorce department, we have the odd case which is dowry based, you know, and there is now a dowry law which the courts have finally recognized that, you know, there is such thing as dowry, and when Asians get married, it's very much part of the whole wedding and the marriage, and hence when they get divorced, it's also taken into account, and it's quite different to the non-dowry marriages.
I have never had a woman come to me and said, you know, this is why I've come to you because of this. What they usually come with is issues around depression, issues around anxiety, self-harm, panic attacks. They're struggling at some level to cope, and they don't label it. The labels, I suppose, come from people like us who actually work in the field. But they simply come because they do not feel good in themselves, or somebody has sent them and said, you know, maybe you need to talk to somebody about your experiences. And that's how they usually present themselves. They will usually say, I feel extremely depressed, I'm not sleeping, you know, my health is suffering, I feel extremely stressed, I'm finding it difficult to cope with the children. There will be a number of cases, but very few, and it's mostly the overt domestic violence cases where women have already left, they're in a refuge, they're in contact with other support agencies, that they will say, I'm coming to you because, yes, I have experienced domestic violence.
So you're also a trainer now for the A&E unit and places like that?
Not the A&E unit, but within each, I do deliver training on domestic violence awareness, and at the moment that is specifically for the health sector. It's an interesting point because within the health, research has shown that women will access up to 10 agencies before the needs of either herself and her children are met. And furthermore, that if you're from a BME community, that number could well rise. 10 agencies to be in contact with that's
amazing, isn't it? Do you also refer them to solicitors to get non-molestation orders? And
absolutely. I can only do a limited amount of work, and really our strength is in the fact that we can refer them to specialist agencies, to people, to solicitors who really do know what they are doing, particularly in the case when we have women who have no recourse to public funding.
In our firm, I know we have a lot of applications for ex parte injunctions, for undertakings. I mean, these are all different technical words, but ex parte injunctions is usually when a woman comes to us as solicitors who's just suffered abuse, and we have to make the application within 48 hours of her actually coming to the office and being in court and getting her some kind of protection. The other phrase I think people might have heard is giving undertakings that are given by the abuser, saying, I undertake, I promise not to do it again. So these are all like warnings before the big, you know, final case where she says, well, this is it, you know, he's given undertakings, he's given promises, he's had non-molestation orders, and then after that they're backed for with powers of arrest. So the next thing would be that he would then get arrested, and that seems to be the point where the abuse stops to some degree. Would you agree with that, Belinda?
Yes, yes. I think it's got better now, though, hasn't it?
Yeah.
From when I was in my situation, you know, that I think women shouldn't stay in that environment. I think it's very harmful for their children. They should get out as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Although we do know from our work with women is actually the point at which they're in the most danger is the point at which they decide to leave.
That's right. Well, it's a natural instinct, isn't it? When your whole senses are spot fear, that's when the flight takes off. Well, we'd like to hear from you after the break on 0871 990 3399. Please call us, tell us your views, and also if you want to speak to our two guests here today, they will be here after the break. Thank you.